To the July 27th, 2021 special board meeting of the Pleasanton Unified School District. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was speedy. Welcome, everybody. It's a quiet meeting tonight. We just have a few items on the special board meeting agenda. We're going to get right to it. Item number 4 on the revised agenda is action on closed session item 2A, stipulated suspended expulsion pursuant to section 48917 of Ed Code, case number 2021.2022.001. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of 4A.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the stipulated suspended expulsion of item 4A. Since we have one trustee who is joining us via Zoom this evening, Trustee Kelly McCaughey, I will do a roll call vote. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee McCaughey? Oh, we are going to have some technical difficulties I can see tonight. Trustee Maher?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Larson, aye. Trustee McCaughey, are you there? Aye. Thank you. So that's 5-0. Thank you. All right, we have. Yep, we got you. Thank you, Kelly.
I'll just do without video then.
Okay, appreciate it. I'm going to do a roll call vote, so you'll hear your name. All right, so we have the agenda approval this evening. It's a short one. If anyone has any changes, let's hear you now. Otherwise, I'll seek a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee McCaughey? Trustee Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Kelly? Are you voting aye to adopt the agenda? All right, we're going to have one abstention or one non-vote on that because we're going to move ahead. All right. So the agenda is approved as presented. We're going to move to our items 6 for report, discussion, and possible action. The first item is our public hearing, report, discussion, and possible action on AB 1200 public disclosure of collective bargaining agreement between PUSD and CSEA Chapter 155 for the 2021 fiscal year. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item, and we'll take it through. Mr. Shikolasami.
Great. I'll take you through the documents. The AB 1200 is a public disclosure document that goes through the fiscal impacts of our tentative agreement with CSEA. There are 4 components to this agreement for 2021. The first component is an off-schedule equivalent to a not-to-exceed amount of $350,000. And then there is an ongoing compensation study component to it. The third component is a squaring of the salary schedule based on starting at the new minimum wage, and that is an ongoing adjustment to the salary schedule. And the last component is a 1.5% salary adjustment to the new squared salary schedule for all staff. And so that is also ongoing. The documents that you have before you outline the cost of the first year, which is the current fiscal year we're in, and that total cost accounts for the retro pay, which will be last year's cost for active employees. And so that includes all of those 4 components for the fiscal year of 2021, which will be paid in the current fiscal year. And then the ongoing portion of those 3 components are included in year 1 year 2 and year 3, not the off schedule. And then those, the documents show the critical component of that is that the district over the multi-year period can afford those. And on the final page of the documents in front of you, it goes through the fiscal impacts to year 1, 2, and 3, and it does a check to ensure that the minimum 3% reserve rates are maintained. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the documents.
Do the trustees have questions? I have a question. So on the AB 1200, which latest board-approved budget are you referencing?
The budget that we are referencing in the final one, which we sent out, the blue-sheeted one yesterday, it is the adopted budget. So only the adopted budget. We haven't added any of the enacted state budget. We'll be bringing that to the 45-day budget. So in that 45-day budget, we'll bring back some of the additional dollars, and this TA will also be included.
So just for the public's benefit, this is the budget, budgeted numbers are the budgets that the board approved for adopted budget, and the budget has since, the state budget has since improved since then. So we'll see at the 45-day revise some adjustments as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Okay, sure. Go ahead, Trustee Carrion.
So I'm looking at the page that talks about, will it increase deficit spending, and how will you make the cuts? And I'm wondering, how much will the deficit spending be, and how would you propose the staffing reductions? Where will you reduce staff?
So that's a good question. I mean, that's the work that we have already started some of that work in some of the reductions that are built in, but we're going to have to look at our ratios with our enrollment throughout the grades. We'll have to look at, both support programs and other programs that the district has, and aligning those with our enrollment. So it's a through kind of evaluation at every level to ensure the staffing is aligned with enrollment.
And I just had a comment about the one-time, the finishing off of the compensation study. So I really appreciate the staff and, the administration going back and working with our CSEA folks to complete that process. We felt we were interrupted in our work that we wanted to do with that, but by virtue of the state budget at that time. So I really want to appreciate staff for bringing that back and allowing, negotiating with the CSEA folks to make that process complete in a more satisfactory manner, let's put it that way. So Mr. Gannon, I don't believe we have any public comment on this item.
We do not.
President Larson, I just have one quick question.
Sure. Go ahead, Trustee McCaughey.
I know the trustee asked one of my questions about the deficit spending. Thank you, Trustee Karen. Could you just recap for the public's benefit the 1.5% ongoing? Could you just explain that briefly so any public attendees understand what that refers to?
Yeah. So every employee is at a certain, placement in the salary schedule, and this 1.5% moves the entire salary schedule 1.5% higher, and so that's the additional compensation and then the additional cost to the district on an ongoing basis. So for this unit, that cost of 1.5% is approximately, around, I believe, $390,000 or $400,000. And Tom, you can correct me with the numbers if I was correct. So that's what that 1.5% represent, is an across-the-board increase to all the salary schedule for CSEA.
Okay, great. And then the deficit spending amount, just so we're clear, is $450,000. But as you said, there are some actions planning to accommodate if staffing modifications need to be changed or modified down the road, correct?
Correct, yeah. So, we are increasing our deficit spending, but we're going to be looking in the 45-day budget. There's additional revenues that are going to be included into the ongoing multi-year as well. And then out years, we're going to have to look at that. If enrollment is where it is currently, we need to tighten enrollment. We need to tighten staffing throughout the district.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you, President Lurs.
All right, if there are no more questions, just checking. I'll go ahead and close, and there's no public comment, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and that concludes item A. We'll move on to item B, 6B, which is report, discussion, and possible action on the tentative agreement that we've just been talking about under the public disclosure for the 2021 fiscal year with CSEA. Are you, Mr. Hernandez, are you with us?
Yes. Good evening, President Larson, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Hagelin. Before the board, we've just discussed in the public hearing the AB 1200 for the collective bargaining agreement, or the tentative agreement with CSEA. The component that's being presented today to the board is the compensation piece. One of the key components is to fully implement the classification study.
Mr. Hernandez, I apologize. I made a mistake, and we do need to take action on the AB 1200 disclosure. So I'm going to back you up just a little bit. Apologies for that. So we've had questions on 6A, which is the public hearing, but we do need to vote to approve the disclosure. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move approval of the AB 1200 public disclosure of collective bargaining agreement between PUSD and CSEA.
Second.
I'll second it.
All right. Trustee McCaughey.
Aye.
Carry on.
Aye.
Maher. Miller.
Aye.
And Larson, aye. Thank you. Dr. Hagelin, I apologize for skipping over that. All right, Mr. Hernandez, you're back on item 6B, please.
Thank you. So a description of what we are proposing the board approve tonight is to fully implement the classification study that was started in 2018-2019. In 2019-2020, there were only 80 classifications that were improved to the 50th percentile or above. By approving this agreement tonight, all of our classifications will be either at the 50th percentile or above with our CSEA unit. Additionally, there was a compensation, as Mr. Shikosalami mentioned, of $350,000 of one-time money that was distributed among the CSEA membership as part of the agreement to close the study and bring closure to it. Again, elevating everybody within the study, within our classified unit with CSEA at or above the 50th percentile. Additionally, there is a squaring of the salary schedule. This is an item that's in the collective bargaining agreement. Currently, the salary schedule is not squared. And by squaring the salary schedule, we would have met and will meet our obligation in the collective bargaining agreement. We agreed to square it based on the $15, which is the minimum wage that will be established in January. So this sets that agreement with our collective bargaining agreement to square the salary schedule, and it makes it whole. And the 1.5, this is the overall raise that will be given across the board after the squaring of the salary schedule. So there is an additional component, which is the 3.68% improvement to the cost of the medical to our employees who are receiving medical through the school district. The 3.68% represents the increase in cost to the medical benefit, and the district is proposing that we meet that cost. So that is the additional component to this compensation study. To the compensation for CSEA. So to summarize, we are proposing that we close the compensation study and fully implement it by elevating those classifications that were not elevated up to the 50th percentile or above. Also to give $350,000 across the board to all CSEA members as a matter of settling that classification study. Also squaring the salary schedule, which is a contractual obligation that currently we are not meeting, which we will meet should the board agree. In addition to that, having a 1.5% increase generally to the salary schedule. And then finally, the 3.68% increase in the medical benefits to those CSEA members that are currently receiving medical through the school district. It has been quite a journey in negotiating. I appreciate our CSEA partners and the administrative team working really hard in getting an agreement with our classified unit. What is being presented today is the compensation piece so that we are able to start that process of processing all of the individual unit members' salary screens, which is going to be quite a task should the board approve today. We are aiming to present the whole CBA at the August 12th meeting. There are 4 other articles that CSEA and the district have agreed to that will be wholly presented to the board on the August 12th board meeting. Is there any questions? I'll be happy to answer.
Mr. Hernandez, I think for the public's benefit, could you describe what you mean by squaring the salary schedule?
Yes, so in our collective bargaining agreement, there are steps and columns. So there was column 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then there are steps that go from 1 to 30. The difference between the columns is 2.5%. So if you jump from one column 1, column A to column B, the difference in pay is 2.5%. If you jump from step 1 to step 2, that difference, I believe, is 5%. Right now, the salary schedule is not squared, meaning that the jump from a column to the next column may be 3%, it may be 1.5%. It's not squared. And part of the reasoning behind it, why it's not squared, is that we were engaged in some reclassifications that happened prior to 2017 that dis-squared the salary schedule. And in our collective bargaining agreement, it says that it will be squared 2.5 and 5%. And what we are doing is correcting that.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the
And
trustees?
just on the step and column situation, steps are related to positions or whatever, and columns are related to longevity in those positions?
So the steps are related to how many years of service you have, and the columns are related to your range. Meaning if you are range 16, that identifies you in that classification as a range 16 classification or a range 18 classification. The higher the range, the more compensation you receive, and the steps are the number of years that you have within that classification.
Are there any other questions? Trustee McCoshey, do you have any questions?
Oh, thank you, Trustee. President Larson, I asked my question earlier, so I'm good. Thank you.
All right. All right, I don't see any questions. We do not have public comment on this item, so I'll seek a motion.
I'll move approval of the tentative agreement with Classified School Employees Association for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded to gratefully approve the agreement with CSEA for 2020-2021. I'll call a roll. Trustee McCoshey?
Aye.
Carry-on?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. Thank you very much for all your hard work. Both negotiating teams, I know, have been working hard on this for quite a while, and we really appreciate the collaboration.
And back at it.
Yeah, and back at it. Back at it for the new, we'll look forward to the full agreement on the 12th of August. 6C is report discussion and possible action on our revised board policy for independent study. Dr. Hagelin.
All right, I'll take this one, President Larson.
Great, Mr. Dialazzo.
Yes, good afternoon, President Larson, Dr. Hagelin, Board of Trustees, Cabinet, and Community. Before you is item 6C. This is a report, discussion, and possible action item, and we have revised, we brought forth a proposal of the revised Board Policy 6158, which is on independent study. And really the reason for this proposal is due to the signing of Assembly Bill 130, which was signed by the governor on July 9th. And we are here to do a brief presentation on the changes brought forth by the new bill and the new law and the impact to our current independent study program. So with that presentation, I have with me our Director of Educational Options, Heather Pereira, our Director of Student Services, Leslie Heller, and our Senior Director of Special Education, Ken Gokin. Ms. Pereira will take the lead, and are you with us, Ms. Pereira?
I am. Good evening, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks. All right, so just going to kind of take you through the changes. And again, these were precipitated by Assembly Bill 130, which affects the rules and regulations around independent study in California. All right, so our model for going back to school in the fall is daily in-person learning for all students. And so for the 2021 school or 21-22 school year, in-person attendance is compulsory. The state has allowed families who wish to opt out of daily in-person attendance due to health and safety concerns, or frankly, any other concern, to be able to do so through the independent study model. Here in Pleasanton Unified, we have worked on enhancing our virtual academy, which utilizes the independent study apportionment model. So AB 130, signed into law just a few weeks ago, provided additional parameters. One parameter is that districts have to offer independent study now to families who wish to remain at an at-home learning model. We're no longer able to offer that through a classroom the way we did last year. So I'm going to try to give you sort of some notable new requirements of AB 130. So daily synchronous instruction is required for students in grades TK through 3. Weekly synchronous instruction for students in grades 4 through 12. Daily live interaction for students in grades 4 through 12. Well-defined tiered re-engagement strategies for students who might not be participating. A written board policy is required. We did have one already. However, we needed to update that to reflect the current requirements of this law. And then we need to notify district families of the option to participate in the independent study, or what we're calling Pleasanton Virtual Academy, in lieu of the daily in-person attendance requirement. This table attempts to sort of capture some of the requirements. Some of it's from AB 130 and some is just mandated time for students to be in school. So you can see that daily synchronous instruction again is required for our youngest learners, though no time per day is mandated for synchronous instruction. And then our total minutes, that's the total minutes of asynchronous instruction and student work time. In independent study, attendance and apportionment is captured by teachers certifying that students did work on work for a certain amount of time per day. And so we'll continue to use that model, and we'll continue to use these minutes to guide our work with the students. You'll notice that these are aligned to our students who are attending school on a daily basis as well. The AB 130 introduced something called daily live interaction. That's a fairly new term to all of us, and so lots of questions about what that is and how it's going to be executed. We have lots of questions as well. We're continuing to stay in contact with the CDE and the CCIS and other organizations that can help us to better interpret some of this law as we plan what our days and weeks will look like for our students. But you'll see here, particularly in 4th through 12th grade, that daily live interaction is required, but that daily synchronous instruction is not required. Then weekly synchronous instruction is required. So you're probably starting to see it's a bit of a puzzle for our staff, but it's okay. We've been working on this for quite a while before the assembly bill, so it's just a matter of kind of putting structures into place to be sure that we're meeting with our students appropriately and accordingly. There are provisions for students with exceptional needs. So students have IEPs and 504 plans may be considered for enrollment in the virtual academy. The IEP team will meet, and we should obtain a recommendation, ideally prior to enrollment. I do realize we have a little bit of crunch time here, but that students, important to understand that students may enroll in the absence of an IEP team recommendation, and that the amendment to the IEP will detail the adjustments that are needed for the student to participate in the virtual academy. We do make every effort to support students as best we can, but it still may not be the best offer of FAPE, and so we will discuss that with each family individually and determine how we will make adjustments accordingly. These are the definitions from the state, so live interaction and synchronous instruction. I'll just paraphrase them. Live interaction is really what we've known as Zoom school for quite some time now. Our kids Zoom in and they're interacting with their teacher and they're interacting with their classmates, and teachers are talking to students, students are talking to teachers. Sorry, that's backwards. Synchronous instruction is what I just described, which is the classroom style instruction, Zoom school. Live interaction is actually the one that's new to us. And that is it's less defined. It's a little bit unclear in some places, but it's an interaction in some way between the people and somebody from Pleasanton USD. This can include certificated staff. It may include their peers or it may not. It may be a meeting with a counselor. It could be a wellness check. It could be a student taking an exam. It could be progress monitoring. For both of these synchronous and live interactions, this might take place in person or over the internet or through telephonic communication, which we think means a telephone, like a phone call. So that one is, again, a little bit different for us, and we're working on getting clarity. The synchronous instruction, again, my apologies for flipping those, is what we're most accustomed to with students, with that two-way interaction, predictable delivery of small group or one-on-one instruction. Also important to note with synchronous instruction that this is to be with a certificated teacher of record. Unlike the live interaction where, for example, I could call the student, I wouldn't be the teacher of record, but I could call and check in with them, and that would count as live interaction. So those are the major changes for AB 130. You probably have questions. We have a few people here who are available to assist with questions.
All right, Trustee Carry-On, questions?
Yes, I'm very confused about the difference between the daily live and daily synchronous. So like if I'm a parent at home and I'm wondering, do I homeschool my child or do I bring them to independent study? I would like us to maybe define it a little bit more. For example, if I'm in kindergarten, will I be having a small group instruction? Will I be having guided reading? Will I be having those types of things? Or if I'm in 5th grade, do I only do that once a week? What do you see it looking like?
Yeah, so our teachers are just returning and we're just starting to put those example calendars together. We actually did provide an example calendar. We have that on our website right now for K through 5. Daily synchronous instruction means that the students are going to meet with their class and their teacher once per day. we are trying to plan ways for this to be flexible. One of our challenges is that a number of our families are, prior to AB 130, were seeking maximum flexibility. So the daily synchronous Zoom time at a scheduled time each day may not work, and that's why they were seeking virtual academy. So we're scheduling several opportunities for students to get that synchronous time with their teachers. In addition to the mandated synchronous time, students in all grades, but I'm going to kind of talk about elementary right now, will have optional opportunities or possibly highly encouraged opportunities, depending on the student's situation, to opt in for things like reading groups, for math groups, for science instruction. But again, in terms of the mandated piece, it is daily synchronous. So we're interpreting that right now as once per day. Our structure will provide more. Again, we were already planning that. We're just trying to figure out a way to be sure that we adhere to the rules of AB 130 while providing our families, some of our families, with the flexibility that they're asking for.
Just have one more question. And so what do the numbers look like? So if I'm a first grade teacher, would I have like 20 on first grade, or am I going to have ages first, second, and third as independent study? What are your numbers?
Yeah, right now, sorry, I had my numbers up on my screen and I closed them. So right now in K through 5, we have about 60 students total. And we have 4 teachers. So they are dividing them in a way that makes most sense. Our lowest elementary grades are 3rd and 4th, with a total of 14 between 3rd and 4th. So we would, right now we're talking about grouping 3rd and 4th. This could change dramatically over a few days. For example, we received 15 enrollment requests yesterday, and they were primarily elementary. So if we get 15 third graders, that's going to change that number. So our teachers are working together as a team. They really are a multi-grade level, multidisciplinary team working to determine how they are going to accommodate the workload, meet with the students, and make sure that they're providing the students with, again, that direct instruction, and particularly for our really young students, the reading instruction that they need, even though they can't be in person with us.
Other questions? Kelly?
Yes, Heather, I just have one question. For the benefit of the public who might be attending, what is your take on the biggest difference for the independent study based upon the new expectation? Is it the daily synchronous instruction that I see is for TK through 3rd, and weekly synchronous instruction for secondary and intermediate? Any other big changes that you're seeing that having to make for modifications, just for the benefit, for like example, parents who've done independent study before, and now this is a big change? Are there any other changes just for the benefit of the public or parents who are attending to be aware of?
Yeah, so we do need to, so the daily engagement is a little bit different. So the live interaction and daily engagement is a little bit different. Again, we're seeking clarity from the state on what that looks like. But we already had in our program tiered re-engagement. This was something we did last year, where if students didn't engage in school for a certain number of days, we would, start a process of re-engaging them. That is a little bit more well-defined by the state than with some additional steps in place. And then what we're not clear on, again, we're still seeking information, is some of our students, the reason they were looking for virtual academy was because they needed flexibility, because maybe they were, actors and they weren't going to be able to participate in school on Tuesday and Thursday, but they could participate in school for more time on, the other days of the week. It looks like there's less flexibility there. So that's what we're trying to determine, is what are sort of those levels of flexibility. Do we need to document that the student is engaged in 300 minutes of work per day Can the students shift that around throughout the week? I will say some of our older students really benefited from that ability to shift things around. Right now, the way the law is reading, we don't think so. We think they're going to have to be engaged 300 minutes per day, and we'll have to document that. So that's going to be something that we'll be communicating with our families as we continue the onboarding process. We, again, are just trying to get as much clarity as possible so that we can communicate to our families what our parameters are so families can determine where they have flexibility. In terms of the synchronous instruction, that is different, but it really isn't outside of the lines of what we were planning anyway, because it's a best practice for our youngest learners. The only difference is that we wouldn't be able to excuse students from the synchronous learning. Now that's compulsory daily, unlike before where, you know, they could choose to maybe not attend. Again, if they were making satisfactory academic progress, because if they're not, then we start re-engaging and we have expectations to attend more. So yeah, so those are kind of the biggest changes for us. We knew this was coming, so we were kind of, you know, we've been planning, our teachers have been planning this summer, we've been recruiting additional teachers this summer, but we couldn't really nail down the specifics until we got the information from the state. And so now we're kind of in the process of doing that, and then just seeking some additional clarity where it's unclear right now.
Okay, thank you. Those are all that was my key question. And I appreciate your hard work to get additional clarity as we go. Just one quick point. Is there any flexibility with asynchronous instruction? The big emphasis is synchronous instruction, correct?
Yes, but we still do have that question about, do they need to participate in asynchronous some number of minutes per day? It's not entirely clear. Yeah, we're looking to try to figure out where we can provide flexibility there.
Okay, I'll pass it off to other trustees for any other questions. Thank you.
Thanks. I do have a question, Heather. So what tool are our teachers going to be using to document all of the components that we need to keep track of?
Yeah, we have a lot of tools. So we're actually trying to figure out which. So there's multiple components that we have to document. So we have to document the time value of student work as certified by teachers for ADA. So we have a process for that. And it varies per grade level. For 6 through 12, we're able to utilize our learning management system to an extent. Teachers do go outside of that. And when they do, they simply make a copy of a student work sample, certify that, and put it in a student's file. In elementary school, K through 5, TK through 5, we primarily utilize Seesaw as our learning management tool, and we keep track there. We are looking at utilizing Q, the student information system, to document the daily synchronous interactions, the daily live interactions. That would just be a matter of adding an additional field for attendance just for Virtual Academy. But again, we're just still waiting for just a little bit more clarity. I'm actually meeting with our auditor soon, hopefully, to get more information. All districts are kind of in this spot right now of trying to set up each of these systems. We're really lucky that we do have a lot of digital systems in place. It's just kind of a matter of picking the correct one for each type of interaction and attendance piece that we need to document.
I know there's more conversations happening, and I think they're looking at adjusting CalPADS for reporting on this as well, but that's not here yet, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
School starts in 2 weeks. It's fine.
Yeah, no big deal, right? So in terms of, I mean, I see this as an upside too, though, because the idea that maybe you have multiple age children that you're working with, you'll be able to, you're not limiting, the age by, seat in the grade level kind of work. You'll be able to do more differentiation in the independent study model for sure. And so I look forward to that. So in terms of class size, how many students will each independent study teacher be responsible for?
So, yeah, so class size is, it's hard. It's hard for us internally, I will say, even for us to stop talking in terms of class size and sections, because that's what we're so used to. But independent study really does work differently. So for our elementary teachers, it is different because they are self-contained in that they can, the students can report to one elementary teacher. So we are keeping those at, the lower than typically what you would see in a classroom, because right now those numbers are lower. Ideally for us in independent study, it's about 24 students in an elementary setting, to ensure that we're able to provide the students with the one-on-one interaction that they need throughout the week. There's a lot of assessments that need to happen and things with our elementary students. So that's been the number that we've been utilizing. We could go all the way up to the contract number if we needed to, but we've been sticking to the 24 to be sure that we can provide the students with what they need. In 6 through 12, it's a little different because the teachers, the students shift to having content area teachers. And this is where it becomes a gigantic puzzle for the kids of, here's where I'm going to meet with my teachers and, get some direct instruction. Kids actually have a lot more choice at that age level because the daily synchronous doesn't mandate they have daily synchronous with each content area teacher. So it's kind of a lot of coaching with the students and, helping them to make choices around where they will engage and where they have flexibility. At our upper grades, we have our content areas teachers teaching content. So to be clear, they are doing the content. But in addition to doing the content, each teacher has a caseload. And, we call the teacher with the caseload, that's their advisory class at that time to sort of parallel what we do with the comprehensives. And the advisory teachers, we try to keep around 12 because they meet with those students once a week personally and they progress monitor those students and they, again, will initiate re-engagement protocol if needed. They will assign students to tutorials when needed. So it's really like having that one teacher who oversees your whole academic life when you're a kid. So that is a little lower, but those teachers are also, they don't just have 12 students, they're also teaching everyone in their content area. So they can have 12, 13 students for advisory, but then have 50 students for 4 different math levels. So it's set up very differently than a classroom would be. It really demands that our teachers have a very organized schedule, are able to respond to students pretty quickly. But it's also, our teachers have reported it's a pretty fun way to teach and it's a pretty fun way to interact with kids. And to your point, Joan, the differentiation is awesome. It's fun. We can really help kids who, might need a little bit more in one area, a little bit less in another area because we can really target their needs here.
Are there other questions from the trustee or shall I take public comment? All right, Mr. Gannon, we have public comment on this item.
Yes, we have one public comment from Judith Lieberman. So, Judith, I see you're with us. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'd like to thank you for all your hard work ensuring Pleasanton's diverse students a safe education in the midst of this pandemic. It's a positive step that the virtual academy will add daily synchronous instruction, and I hope this will go beyond the minimum California mandate to provide equally enriching PUSD education to all our children, including the medically vulnerable. I urge you to extend the virtual option to include at least one dual language immersion elementary class. Our students, parents, teachers, and the district put immense effort into our bilingual program, and it has wonderful outcomes for students. A key tenet of the program is to continue Spanish immersion and introduce English each year of elementary. In this uncertain year, when a non-trivial percentage of families need virtual instruction, supplying a dual language immersion virtual option will help this program retain students, ease transitions for the teachers, and provide a backup as conditions evolve. The pandemic has not hit everyone equally. minority groups, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and medically vulnerable families have all faced bigger hardships. The PUSD dual language immersion program is unique in that it supports the most socioeconomically diverse population in Pleasanton, as well as the most of the English language learners. Providing continuity of education in the bilingual program is a key way for PUSD to support its more vulnerable students and provide equity and access to education. The Virtual Academy's focus on individual learning is a very plausible fit for a mixed grade dual language immersion class. And I'm sure there is a way PUSD can pull together and set up one virtual class to provide dual language immersion students with a virtual education option this year. Thank you.
That's all the public comment we have this evening. Director Pereira, has there been conversation about the DI program and independent study?
We've had a couple of families ask. It's, and it's certainly not outside the realm of possible. We would need students to commit to be able to make that decision. It's kind of about staffing and where we can allocate our resources. So we're definitely open to the conversation. We would need to find a qualified staff member. As you all know, all of these things can be challenging, but not outside of things that we're willing to discuss and attempt to provide.
Trustee Maher.
Heather, have many parents discussed the program with you, dual immersion with you at all?
Just a few. I haven't had a large number of inquiries, no.
Is it K-5 or just little
Just
ones?
K-5. Yeah, I haven't heard anything from our secondary.
I think it would be great if we could do something. It would help the program as we transition back, hopefully, to in-person.
But you'd have to have enough to make, yeah.
Trustee Miller.
So one thing that I just thought about in the policy that was kind of a departure from what we were thinking beforehand, and it's part of the AB 130, is the ability to move in and out of the program. Did I understand that correctly? It's now much more, I mean, we were going to sort of counsel people that once you make the decision, you got to stay there, but now there's mandated flexibility, I guess, right?
Yes, so that is part of the Assembly bill, is that there's actually no language about moving into and how long that would take, but there's language about moving out and moving back into a seat-based attendance program. And so we are committing to do that in 5 days. We cannot hold spaces at schools for students. So if they move into Virtual Academy and then need to move back, we will move them back within 5 days to the grade level where there is available space. And if there is, if they are secondary students, to the courses where there is available space. It's disruptive. Moving is disruptive. And so with the majority of our families, we have that conversation about how moving is disruptive. And we do explain that, we have no interest in forcing anyone to stay anywhere that they don't want to be, but we would work with them to be sure that we could make that move for the student in the least disruptive way. That said, if mandated by law and we need to move them in 5 days, we will move them within 5 days back to a seat-based program. It just may not be at the school of residence if that school has a waiting list.
I think it's important to understand, for the public to understand, that the changes in this law, that the state's point is that students will be back in person in school, and we are not doing remote learning. And so the changes to the independent study law really are I don't want to call it a Band-Aid, but a way to shoehorn some competing things in. And the 5-day returning students within 5 days is really to make sure that students who are not progressing, who are not doing well in independent study, are not left there to, overly miss out on their education, and that the districts, need to determine that they're not making progress and that you've done the re-engagement strategies and you've done all that work, but at the end of the day, if they're not doing well, you need to put them back in in a classroom. So it isn't, I don't think, so much intended to say, we don't want you to have flexibility, parents. It's really about the student's education. So that seems really short. 5 days is really a short amount of time for a district to rearrange and accommodate and make those changes. But the intent is to make sure that our students are successful in the program to begin with. So that's the goal. All right, so any further questions or comments? Mr. Maher.
Yes, just one real quick one, Heather. Students that are on an IEP 504s, have you looked into that? Do we have people that will be teaching in the IEP process?
So yeah, if a student has an IEP, then we do have to have a meeting where the IEP team comes together to determine if we can provide FAPE in the independent study virtual academy setting. We do have a number of students in PUSD with IEPs that are interested in this virtual academy, at least until the COVID situation improves. So I'm working closely with the director of special education and with the senior director who's on our call here to be sure that we are properly staffed for these students, not just in terms of their teaching, but in terms of additional services that we may need to support and provide. So I don't know if Mr. Gokin would like to contribute any additional information to this answer.
Yes, it'll all depend on their individual IEPs. So some students on IEPs may be fully mainstreamed. And so we do have general education teachers available for that. So we'll be looking at what their IEPs call for, as well as in providing alternative services, additional services, whether it's speech, counseling, occupational therapy, or other services, and how those services would be provided to that student in this remote process, and taking into account case management limits and other things with our staff across the district.
So,
Thank you.
Trustee Marr, can I just add one thing? So the key to the students with IEPs is really that meeting, because the IEP team has to help the virtual academy understand who the student is, what the needs are of this particular student, and how we would provide them in that setting. So it's really, really important to have that meeting, have those discussions, and we can make recommendations through an amendment process of the IEP as to what would work and how we can offer FAPE in that setting. But I just wanted to make that point, is that meeting is really the integral part to a student going into the academy.
So I just have one quick question for Heather. Because there's some ambiguity in terms of the live interaction and what that looks like, and synchronous instruction, and this is more for the benefit of parents. Is there a certain deadline that they need to make to decide if they're going to select independent study versus homeschooling or another option, or is there some flexibility, or could you just clarify that? Because there are potentially some questions parents might have, and we don't have, the district may not have necessarily all the answers. So is there any flexibility in enrollment for the independent study?
Yeah, so, AB 130 says it has to be provided as an option. So we are not seeing any language that says that we can turn families away at any time. So, they can continue to enroll. Again,
that's an open enrollment, so they could decide in October to change and pull out from in-class instruction. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The law states that, if families decide that the students need to enroll for health and safety reasons, that we can enroll them. Again, it's kind of like everything else. We need to be able to staff. We need to be able to make sure that we can appropriately support the students. So sooner is always better. We do understand that we're just filled with unknowns still. I do encourage families of younger students, K through 5, to go ahead and look at the website, because we do have example schedules there that attempts to clarify sort of like what it would look like on a daily basis for students in grades TK through 5 at least. Upper grades, we're working on those calendars now. But until the students actually get enrolled, it's kind of tough. Again, our teachers do work one-on-one with the students and the families to make sure that they structure the days and the weeks in a way that works for the family.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your hard work with your team to try to navigate through the changing legislation and all that. So thank you very much. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the revised Board Policy 6158 independent study.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the board policy 6158 as revised and presented. Trustee McCaughey.
Aye.
Carry-on.
Aye.
Maher. Aye. Miller.
Aye.
Larson. Aye. All right, thank you. Item D is report, discussion, and possible action on change order number 2 for the CTE enhancement at Foothill High School and minor scope changes at Amador Valley High School for mid-state construction. Mr. Chwastik or Mr. Shikosami?
Great. I've asked John to cover it, and he's going to do it briefly. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Amon. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Hagland, Cabinet, and Community. This is a brief item here. It's for both, it's for the mid-state construction contract, which is one contract on 2 projects, which is the Foothill project and also the Amador project. And so we're bringing to you change order number 2. And this is a result of the district receiving the CTE, the Career Technical Ed grant of $3 million for Foothill High. When we received it, or once we heard we received it, we added some scope that the school district and the school site wanted to incorporate that wasn't incorporated before, so we did. And so that's the bulk of the whole change order here. And without going into a lot of detail, it's just adding some doors, it's adding some windows, it's got some roll-up doors, additional power cords from the ceilings, and various other things. Amador had a little credit on fiber reinforced panel doors to hollow metal and to make it consistent throughout the district. And so recommended action is the administration recommends the Board of Trustees to approve change order number 2 for mid-state construction at both Foothill and at Amador.
Are there questions? Trustee McCaughey, do you have any questions?
No questions. Just so nice to hear from John at a nice early time of the evening versus really, really late. But super excited for all the updates. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, and it's also very exciting to walk past those 2 schools and to see the progress on the construction. So with that, I'll seek a motion.
I'll move approval of the change order number 2 for the CT enhancement to Foothill and minor scope changes at Amador Valley.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve change order number 2 for the CTE enhancement at Foothill High School and scope changes at Amador Valley High School for mid-state construction. Trustee McCaughey? Trustee Carry-On?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Trustee McCaughey? Is Trustee McCaughey still on the line, Mr. Gannon? Can you tell? She is. Kelly, we can't hear you if you're voting. All right, due to technical difficulties, we are going to have 1 vote shy, an absent vote on that one. It's 4-0 on item number D to approve the change order number 2. And that is all the items on our agenda this evening. Our regular, actually, we don't have the date on here. Our regular board meeting is in August, I believe August 12th, when we will return and school will have begun. So with that, we'll say goodnight. Thank you.